January 2012, Ceres, Goiás, Brazil. The sunlight cut through the narrow barred windows of cell 14, slashing across the cold concrete floor in long, jagged lines. Dust hung in the shafts of light like tiny suspended particles of time, drifting lazily, indifferent to the slow grind of prison life. Raphael Valadão shifted on his metal bunk, muscles aching, joints stiff. Every sound, every echo had been cataloged in his mind. The scrape of boots along concrete, the metallic jingle of keys, the distant muttering of guards. And now, each was part of a rhythm he could navigate blindfolded. He pressed his shoulder against the far wall where a shower pipe had been removed weeks earlier, replaced with a scaffold of wood and cement dust. Behind it, a hollow waited. It was not merely space, it was the threshold of possibility. He tapped lightly with a makeshift chisel, listening intently for hollow echoes that betrayed the density of the cement. Each strike was measured, each vibration traveled. Too loud and the guards would hear, too soft and progress would be wasted. Outside, his cellmates moved with coordinated silence. One swept dust into corners, another monitored the corridor, eyes alert to even the smallest deviation in the guard's pattern, and a third arranged metal rods and improvised tools, passing them silently through the shadows. Their movements were choreographed, invisible yet precise, every micro gesture a note in the symphony of escape. Days passed like that. The tunnel grew slowly, inch by inch. The walls resisted, but Valadão adapted. He tested angles, leveraged small cracks, adjusted the depth, feeling the hidden veins of the prison through vibrations in the wall. Every night, when lights dimmed and the hum of fluorescent bulbs became a low drone, he worked. Sweat ran into his eyes, dust coated his skin, but his mind was clear, mapping every beam, every support, every step of the guards' predictable patrols. By the end of the first month, the tunnel was deep enough for a small man to crawl through. Valadão measured, recalibrated, imagined scenarios. The first body slipping through, the second, the final push to freedom. Then the night came. Crawling first, he tested the passage, inching forward through the narrow hollow, arms scraping the rough cement, chest pressed tight against the wall. Behind him, his cellmates followed in silence. The final bend approached, walls pressing tighter. Valadão twisted, strained, and wedged himself midway. Panic flickered briefly, but focus returned. A muffled shout escaped. Boots clattered, keys jingled, guards were coming. Firefighters were summoned. Drills, sledgehammers, and chaos brought him out. Body scraped, dust-coated, exhausted, yet alive. Months of planning had yielded only partial success, but the tunnel remained, a testament to patience, calculation, and obsession. Valadão lay on his bunk, eyes fixed on the ceiling. Every sound of the prison was catalogued, every misstep noted. The promise of freedom was still there, buried under concrete and ambition, waiting for its next chance. February 2012. The prison air was thick with dust, the remnants of cement still clinging to Valadão's hair, clothes, and skin. Guards moved along the corridors, indifferent, unaware that the man they had freed from the first tunnel was already planning the next phase. His body ached, but the humiliation of the previous failure sharpened his focus. The first attempt had taught him patience and precision. It had revealed the gaps in the wall, the cracks in the plan, the subtle miscalculations that would need to be corrected. Valadão studied the structure of the prison with renewed attention. The thickness of walls, the placement of beams, ventilation shafts, the layout of corridors, and the predictable positions of guards, all were catalogued, measured, and mentally mapped. Every scratch, every tap, every faint vibration was observed and remembered. He tested the wall with tiny strikes, noting the shifts in material density, each movement a step toward understanding the invisible skeleton of the prison. Roles were assigned more strictly this time. One cellmate monitored guards' movements and signaling clear intervals. Another handled dust and debris, sweeping into corners to avoid detection. The third managed tools, passing rods and improvised chisels with near-invisible gestures. Their choreography became instinctive, silent, rehearsed, like shadows moving through a dimly lit cathedral of stone. Each night, they worked together, tapping, scraping, pushing inch by inch into the wall, measuring, stabilizing, and monitoring for weaknesses. Time stretched. Weeks passed. Walls yielded slowly, concrete dust filling the air. Valadão's body hardened, calluses formed, muscles burned, yet his mind sharpened. Each inch of tunnel gained brought them closer to freedom. Guard patterns were observed obsessively. Tiny deviations became critical markers. The pause at the infirmary corner, the tilt of a key in a ring, the rhythm of boots over concrete, all became tools. The tunnel was not simply a passage, but a living entity, its progress dictated by the prison's pulse and the guards' micro-behaviors. By mid-February, the tunnel was navigable, but tight. Valadão tested the passage repeatedly, sending smaller cellmates first to gauge stability. Measurements were precise, repeated multiple times, ensuring that structural collapse was impossible and that movement could be performed silently. Tools were staged for the final push. Timing, sequencing, rhythm, all had been rehearsed. Every detail of the guards' routines was accounted for. March arrived. The team prepared for the final attempt. Night fell, lights dimmed. Valadão led, moving through the narrow tunnel, elbows and chest scraping the cement. Behind him, each cellmate followed, movements synchronized, breaths measured. The passage grew narrower toward the end. He twisted, leveraging against the makeshift supports. A sudden snag held him midway. Metal rods rattled, dust swirled. Silence was punctuated by the faint echo of distant footsteps. Then came the inevitable. Guards noticed. Keys jingled. Boots approached. Shouts cut through the quiet. Panic threatened, but focus held. Firefighters were called. Drills and hammers tore into cement. Valadão emerged, exhausted, dust-coated, yet alive. The tunnel had held. The planning, the observation, the calculation, all had created a framework capable of withstanding chaos, but not yet the final escape. Even as he was led back to the cell, his mind continued working. Every misstep, every small success, every echo of guards' movement became data. The prison itself had become a laboratory, its routines and structures absorbed into his mental blueprint. The first successful passage of his cellmates had proven the concept. The second attempt had tested his limits. And still, the promise of freedom lingered, hidden beneath concrete, waiting for the final moment. March 2012. Ceres prison in Goiás, Brazil, was a breathing machine of concrete, steel, and fluorescent hums. Raphael Valadão pressed against the rough wall of his cell, muscles sore, dust clinging to sweat-slicked skin. Months of planning had brought him to this narrow, precise moment. The tunnel they had dug, reinforced with metal rods and tested for stability, stretched beneath corridors and past guard stations, invisible to the casual eye. Every inch had been catalogued, measured, and rehearsed in his mind. The cellmates were ready. Each moved with silent discipline, communicating with gestures, the almost imperceptible taps of fingers against walls, their breaths measured and synchronized. Valadão led the first crawl, chest scraping concrete, elbows probing for weak spots, dust swirling in the confined air. Every movement had been rehearsed, yet the tension of the night sharpened awareness. The guards' distant footsteps echoed through corridors, distant keys jingling like metronomes. Each sound was a pulse to move with, a signal to freeze, a rhythm of life and danger intertwined. Hours passed as they inched forward, the tunnel a living corridor of their collective patience. The walls groaned slightly under the weight of bodies, metal supports rattling faintly, dust rising in thin clouds that caught the dim light from outside. The outer corridor loomed just within reach, but deadly close to detection. Valadão twisted, rotated, testing angles, leveraging strength against confined space. One slip, one stray movement could undo months of labor. Behind him, his companions mirrored every move, each inhale deliberate, each step controlled, synchronized to the pulse of the prison itself. Finally, they emerged into the maintenance corridors, a shadowed space just beyond the walls of the cell block. The guards were distant, predictable, caught in the rigid patterns Valadão had memorized. One by one, the men passed through, tools stashed, debris swept. leaving no trace of their months-long excavation. Every inch of the tunnel, every plan, every strategy had led to this silent emergence into the first breaths of freedom. April 2012, the streets of Goiás were alive with ordinary rhythm, unaware of the shadows moving through them. Valadão and his companions adopted new identities, blending into crowds, observing routines, and monitoring patrols. Even the most casual interaction became a calculated risk. Every glance, every sound, every movement could betray them. Life outside prison required the same precision that had governed months of tunnel work. They moved through abandoned warehouses, hidden nooks, and temporary refuges. Supplies were acquired cautiously, always leaving minimal trace. Communication became almost entirely nonverbal, gestures and prearranged signals replacing speech. Each day was a rehearsal, a practice in stealth and survival. Observing the city, Valadão adapted his techniques, predicting shifts in enforcement patterns, exploiting gaps in patrols, memorizing the locations of blind spots in lighting, noting the angles of security cameras. Every street, every alley, every doorway became part of a map etched into memory, guiding the fugitive steps through an urban labyrinth of potential capture. Weeks blurred into months. The initial rush of escape had faded into a meticulous daily dance. Every movement, every route, every temporary resting place was selected with care. Valadão studied crowds, read patterns, memorized the movements of law enforcement. Shifts in behavior, subtle changes in routines became vital data points. Supplies were sourced through calculated trips, and each step was measured against potential risk. Even mundane errands became exercises in precision, blending ordinary activity with covert observation. By May 2012, the fugitive life had become a rhythm in itself, a continuation of the patience and meticulous planning that had begun in Ceres prison. The escape, executed with silent perfection, had transformed months of labor into a fluid, ongoing operation in the open world. Yet tension never abated. Every siren, every shadow, every distant vehicle sparked heightened awareness. Sleep was shallow, breaths controlled, senses alert to every sound, every vibration. The world beyond prison was uncharted, yet each calculated movement carried the imprint of months of preparation. Valadão navigated the streets with quiet confidence, his mind constantly running simulations. Patrol shifts were anticipated, cameras avoided, blind spots exploited. The city became an extension of the tunnel, a complex system of pressures, movements, and silent rules. He taught his companions to observe, to anticipate, to adjust instinctively. Shadows became allies, silencing a weapon. Each day's survival reinforced the lessons learned within the walls. Patience, observation, timing, and trust in one's own calculated instincts. Even as weeks passed, the memory of the final bend in the tunnel, the moment he had almost become trapped, remained vivid. Every scrape against cement, every inch squeezed through darkness, had been rehearsed to perfection in his mind. Yet it had taken human will to endure the final strain. That memory shaped every step beyond prison, reminding him that precision alone was insufficient. Control over the body, mind, and environment had been and would remain the only path to survival. Months later, the escape of Raphael Valadão became legend, whispered in corridors and reported in headlines, yet largely misunderstood. The public saw audacity, spectacle, and near impossible improvisation. What remained unseen was the deep calculation, the patient observation, and the relentless attention to detail that had guided him from the walls of Ceres to the streets beyond.